I want to talk to everyone about stories. What is a story? In loose terms, it can be defined as an account of imaginary or real events. But let us really extrapolate on this premise. What is the essence of stories? Is it the emotion, the heart, the way it is conveyed? There's something distinctly humanizing about stories, something connecting about all of them. We tell each other stories for many reasons. For entertainment and to teach each other's lessons, stories are often the first way parents connect with their children, being enamored by works such as those from Dr. Seuss, with fun illustrations and compelling rhyme schemes, but also contains lessons that are deeply symbolic. As we grow older, we realize stories are often more than they appear, that there are layers that hold hidden meaning, waiting to be uncovered. Books can be stories. Stories can be verbally transmitted, orally passed down in history, or eagerly exchanged at Sunday brunch. They can be heard through the emotions and lyrics found in music, or observed through potent depictions in movies and television. In this description, it can safely be said that stories are extremely multifaceted, but ultimately, they are pieces of ourselves. We see ourselves in them and draw inspiration, connection, empathy, and ambition. But I rarely saw pieces of myself in the stories I heard, read, or saw growing up. Rarely saw individuals that looked like me, and that is why I stress the significance of representation. I never saw people who looked like me in those coming-of-age American movies that were so heartfelt that it gets a pass for being cheesy. I never saw people who looked like me, not in mainstream music, where the musicians sing about football bleachers and Friday night lights. And yet, I could never envision myself as the star athlete or the homecoming king. I could not pinpoint those who looked like me, not from public figures to even my public school teachers, the ones who taught me American history and world history. But as I got older, I gradually learned that what the school system really meant was European history and the byproducts of it. When I did see me, I saw what society thought of me. I saw 40-second clips of doctors giving highly technical prescriptions, providing mediocrely important medications, and then never to be seen again. 40 seconds of a 40-minute episode of a 4-season show, about how many seasons it took for me to see someone who looked like me again. I heard many peculiar accents, some talented martial artists, and occasionally, if I am lucky, a lovely, decently attractive, one-dimensional sidekick. Even when I saw people who looked like me, the ones whom people make assumptions off of to characterize me, I realized even they are not that similar to me at all. As I see these brief features of Asian American actors that allow networks to proclaim their woke nature, I'm frustrated at the incomplete stories they tell. Stories that hundreds of talented actors had to fight over and are told to be grateful for, that allow them to slap on the word diversity as if it is a term that implied a brief trip from point A to point B, checking off a box rather than a continuous, intentional, and thought-provoking journey to amplify stories that have been historically oppressed, societally suffocated, and never to be considered important. It is almost like those stereotypes, momentary flickers, torn off pages within a library of stories, fail to capture the complex, nuanced, and culturally diverse identities of an entire ethnicity. For me, I believe that individual lives of people exemplify a type of storytelling in itself. Each person as a character within the convoluted and tangled history book of humanity. For me, I can cite a few examples of when representation engendered a feeling of purpose, strength, and deliberation. Throughout the time period of insanity, when an unknown and undrafted Harvard graduate suddenly sprung onto the scene of the MBA and became a force to be reckoned with, I began having awakened feelings and aspirations. Every layup, jumper, and intercepted ball that Jeremy Lin accomplished, every point he made was an incremental burst of hope and confidence. His talent his charisma and his work ethic emboldened me and made me realize that success, even on the highest level, even for an Asian American, was possible. Another example of a person who impacted me enormously was Andrew Yang. When announcing his presidential campaign, it triggered many strong yet conflicting emotions, a persisting sense of doubt, confusion, and bafflement, but also an overwhelming optimism that lingered for days. I was confused. How could Yang, essentially a nobody compared to the powerhouses of the Democratic Party, be eliciting such strong emotions out of me? I finally realized that the perpetual lack of representation, the marginalization of minorities, and specifically Asian Americans, and the confining nature of stereotypes had made me subconsciously avoid things that I was perfectly capable of pursuing. It wasn't that I didn't know an Asian man could run for president, but simply the fact that it was finally being done. He was setting a precedent, exemplifying that we are more than what conventional standards, media, and society say that we are. I could accomplish anything I set my mind to. We could accomplish anything that we set our minds to. Talented musicians, prolific writers, empowering activists, or even running for the president of the United States. These thoughts ran through my mind roughly a year ago, but as Yang gains more and more momentum, I feel like he is influencing young people to achieve their goals. Every benchmark, rally, public speech, and debate he does inspires me to reach for the stars. He made me realize that through relentless perseverance, the opportunities are truly limitless. Upon reflection, although I embrace the success of these two prominent figures, I'm also deeply cognizant of their trials and tribulations and all the extra hard work it took for them to get to this place. They were underdogs, both proving themselves to a society that has historically never made room for them. Amidst the overwhelming joy and excitement, rampant skepticism and a serious failure to take them seriously made me earnestly question why there was so much doubt. Then I recall glimpses of my past, my childhood accent bring questions to my comprehension, my inability to assemble a suit and tie properly, drawing skepticism to my competency, and every leadership role I thought of pursuing, weighed down by the lack of predecessors before me, lack of stories to prove that I can. And with these recollections, I dare say I made the connection that the societal doubt and pressures placed upon Yang and Ling were not of their abilities, but their Asian heritage. However, regardless of the adversity and obstacles Lin had to hurdle past, cross over, or jump through, he still always ended up taking a shot. The perpetual disrespect and attempted humiliation at Yang, with countless examples, including an incredibly famous and cynical talk show host, scoffing at Yang's genuine intention of winning the presidency, credible news articles putting a picture of a random Asian man on the internet as his face, and call me bold as I say that not every Asian man looks alike, and mainstream media calling him Peter Yang and John Yang, when Peter and John are pretty far off, and Yang is not even right either. Jeremy Lin, Andrew Yang, Prince Wang. Lin, Ling, Yang, Yang, Wang, Wang. Growing up, I struggled to recall when I allowed myself to go by the alias Prince Wang and allowed individuals to pronounce it differently simply out of their convenience. However, I guess this addresses the core of the issue. It is not individual instances of ignorance, but a societal stubbornness to allow news stories to come pouring in. Growing up, and often until we are old and frail, the natural instinct is to adapt to frequently told stories, blend into stories that are culturally accepted, but instead, we need to be bold with our stories, amplify them, and change the narrative behind them. This is so important because when you begin to understand different stories, if you read parts of them incorrectly, then you will not fully understand the essence of them. Similarly, if we are perpetually known through our aliases of Prince Wang, Andrew Yang, and Jeremy Lin, will our stories be fully authentic when the titles of them cannot even be correctly pronounced? As Ling and Yang continue to raise their head up high, my growing respect is owed to their propensity to ignore cheap shots and rather focus on their goals, missions, and values. Their perseverance and humility, passion and love consistently pierce through. I share the same fiery and competitive energy as Ling and a similar passion of helping others as Yang, and like both of them, I also want to change the world. I am studying international relations. I've long wanted to learn more about how the world works and how I can hopefully make it work a little better for those whom the world currently is not working that well for. Many of my friends have described me as overly idealistic to the point of being unrealistic, but I disagree because how are you willing to change the world when you're not even willing to think about changing the world? And anyways, even when the cold chill of reality hits me in the face from time to time, the lessons and wisdom I learn creates the sunshine that enriches my storytelling. Aside from these monumental aspirations, I love to rap, run, and relax. I may be horrible at all these aforementioned activities, but that is hardly a damper from a passion for these hobbies. That, in a convoluted but hopefully somewhat meaningful way, is part of my story, the story of me. Now and forever is the time for you to tell the story of you. Write your story. Jump into your story and seize it. Empower others with your story so that they too will understand that their story is precious and beautiful and powerful. Live your story and dance it. Discover your story for what it is as a beautiful whole, not limited by the societal pressures that threaten to stifle it. Claim your narrative and rewrite the story that was taken from you. Your words, your experiences, and your truth. That is the important part. If we can share each other's stories from the heart, we can begin to dismantle the stories, or should I say stereotypes, society has already written for us. We can shatter untested and unwritten perceptions thrust upon us by a society that does not have the capacity for storytelling. No space for the imaginative worlds of Harry Potter or Percy Jackson. No room for the Lorax, but plenty for the Onceler that cuts down the truffula trees that each uniquely symbolizes our beautiful dreams, our stories, and ourselves, to be fashioned into the oppressive homogeneity that steals us from our truffula trees, but also our truth. Through this perpetual process, let us continue to build more and more bridges of empathy. For the longest time, I have felt that society has known me better than I have known myself. A part of that being because I was scared of going outside of what society has deemed acceptable for me. A part of me did not even realize I could become someone different. But now, with every stroke of my pen, every triumphant success, every defiant word or sentence or TED Talk, I'm beginning to write my own story, and I absolutely cannot wait to hear yours. Thank you.